Hello everyone, welcome back to this video series on clinical SAS ADaM programming. We are taking a look at some of the examples where we may have to create derived records in ADaM PDS datasets. So in earlier videos we have seen how to create maximum post baseline record and minimum post baseline record. In a similar fashion we will see how to create average of all post baseline records within a parameter of a subject in this video. So let us see the specification for this. So here we have been given the specification for ADT, param, param-cd, paraman, eval, avisit, avisitin, and dtype. So for ADT, we are being asked to extract the date portion from VSDT and convert to numeric value. And for param, we are being asked to use the values in VS position variable, VS test variable, and VS stresu variables. For VS position, we are being asked to convert it into proper case first, and then for VS stresu, we were asked to concatenate the value within parentheses. So we will do that in the programming. So param cd, it says if VS position is equal to sitting and VS test cd is equal to sysbp, then set to stsbp. Else if VS position is equal to sitting and VS test cd is equal to diabp, then we are being asked to set it to stdbp. And then next comes our paramin. So if param cd is equal to stsbp, then we are being asked to set a value of 1 to paramin variable. And else if param cd is equal to stdbp, so we are being asked to set it to the value of 2. And for eval, so we are being asked to use the values present in vsstresen variable. And then for avisit, so the derivation is split into two sections. The first one is for source records and the second one is for newly created record. So as seen in the initially, so we are creating an additional record to hold the average value across all post baseline records and append it as a record to the source records. So for the source records, for when VS visit is equal to screen, then we are being asked to use the full text screening in a visit variable. Otherwise, we are being asked to convert the visit values in proper case and assign it to a visit. And then we are being asked to create a new record for each parameter within a subject to hold the average value across all post baseline. This means we'll have to identify all the post baseline records and then calculate the average of it and then append it back to the parent dataset. So on this newly created record, set the avisit value as average of all post baseline values. And for avisit for the source record, so we are being asked to directly use the value from visitNum variable. And on the newly created record holding the average post baseline value, we are being asked to use the value 100. And for dtype, so we are being asked to use the value average on the newly created record holding the average value. So let us now see how this can be implemented programmatically. So here we have our vital signs dataset which we will be using as input. So we have systolic blood pressure and diastolic blood pressure available. And another input dataset for this is our demographics dataset which we will be using to fetch the RFST-DTC as treatment start date for each subject when identifying the post-baseline records. So let us now see the programming for VS. So all these records are considered as source records because we have a record coming from SDTM VS dataset. So we are creating derived variables on the records corresponding to source records. So here we are creating param cd variable. If VS test cd is equal to sysbp and position is equal to sitting, then do param cd is equal to stsbp and 1 for paraman variable. And similarly, we are doing it for diastolic blood pressure. If VS test CD is equal to diabp and position is equal to sitting, then param CD is equal to STDBP and paramin is equal to 2. And then we are closing that end do group with an end statement. And then we are creating our param variable. So we are creating our param variable. So for param, so we were asked to concatenate the proper cased values of VS position and with the values present in VS test and VS stresu. But for VS stresu, we were asked to concatenate that within a parenthesis. Then we are doing that here with opening parenthesis concatenation here and closing parenthesis concatenation here in this step. So, and for ADT, we were asked to extract the date portion from VSDTC. So we are doing that extraction using substrn function and extracting from the first 10 characters from VSDTC. So which would correspond to the date component. And then we are converting it into numeric format using input function and yymmdd10.in format. And then for eval, we were asked to use it as a copy from VSSTRESN, so we are doing that here. And for a visit n, so the value was supposed to be copy from visit num, as these are source records. So it involved two steps. One is assigning the one for source records and a visit n for the derived record. So as these all records correspond to source records only, so we simply can assign visit num to a visit n as per the specification. And then for a visit value, so when the visit is equal to screen, which means the SDTM VS visit value is equal to screen, then we were asked to set the value of screening to the a visit variable. On all the other cases, we were just simply asked to convert the values present in visit variable to proper case and then assign it to analysis visit variable. And then here we are assigning a format of date9 to the newly created date variable ADT. So let us take a look at VS01 and see how the newly derived variables are looking like. So we had variables till VSDTC in our source data, and we have created these new variables. So we have created param cd, param, paramin, ADT, eval, avisit, and avisitn. So if we quickly take a look at param variable, so for when vs we were asked to concatenate the value present in vs position after converting it to proper case. So sitting here we have it in all caps. So we are converting it into proper case. So what will happen? Only the S would remain in capital letter and all the other letters would be converted to lowercase. So we have that sitting appear here, and then we were asked to use the value present in VS test, so which we have as systolic blood pressure. So after sitting, systolic blood pressure is there, and then we were asked to concatenate the unit in parentheses. So mmHg is present here, so that had to be concatenated here within parentheses. So this is coming as expected. And similarly, we have created other variables as well. So let us now move to the next step of creating our derived average record. So let us see how that is being done. So the logic was to create average record for all post baseline records within a subject and parameter. So in order to identify the post baseline record, what we need to have is we need to have the treatment start date available in our vital signs dataset, so that we can compare the treatment start date and the vital signs collection date to check if it is after the treatment start date to identify the post baseline record. So for that reason, so we are using SDTM DM dataset and converting the RFSTDTC values as treatment start date here, and then keeping only those two variables here. So in the next step, we would have merged our DM01 dataset to our VS01 dataset to pull the treatment start date by merging at U sub JD level and creating a new dataset called VS02. So in this entire processing, what would happen is, so treatment start date is created and pulled into our VS01, and we are creating a new dataset to store the result. So let us take a look at VS02. So we will have treatment start date added at the end. So we will have the treatment start date populated across all records of that subject. So and then we now have treatment start date ADT, so that we can filter the post baseline records. So in the next step, what we are doing here is we are taking the records from VS02 which meet the condition ADT greater than TRT SDT. So we are identifying the records which are after treatment start date, which would be our post baseline records, and then we are only considering the records where analysis result is not missing. We are taking the average of only those records which are post baseline and result is not missing. So those records are present in a dataset called AVG01. So let us see how does that look like. So these are all the post baseline records for subject and parameter which are, and we can cross check that with our ADT versus TRT STT. So 29th April is the treatment start date and 13th October is our collection date. So which is after treatment start date only. And then again this is 13th May versus 29th April. So of 2003. This is again greater. So we can again for the second subject 15th October was the treatment start date and this record is in 30th March 2004. So 2003 October 2004 March. So this is a post baseline record. So we are now being asked to take the average of all of these records within each subject and parameter. We have two subjects and two different parameters. So we have but multiple records for each of the subject and parameter here. We'll have to create one record out of these records for subject and parameter, and in the result we'll have to have the mean of all the eval values within a subject and parameter here. So now let us see how that is being done. So we are making use of proc means to fetch the average. So we are using our AVG01 dataset which has our post baseline records, and then we are passing it into this proc means, and then we are saying that group the results within a subject and parameter. So we are using all the three variables param and param cd and param to identify the parameter, and then we are using a subject level variable called TRT in the by group because we needed to identify the mean of all values present within a subject and parameter. So only those variables which correspond to parameter or subject level variables can be kept on the by statement. So we cannot use any date or visit level variables here because those would be different on those records. If when we are trying to average, only those variables which will have same values across all those records can be kept in the by statement. So and then we are saying that our analysis variable is eval, and then we want the mean of the eval across all of these records passed to AVG0 present in AVG01, and then store the resulting mean in a variable called mean again. So we are requesting the statistic mean, which is nothing but average, and then we are storing the average value in a variable named mean. So let us take a look at the dataset AVG02. So here we have we have seen that in the input data set we had data for two subjects 1001 and 1002, and there were two parameters STSBP and STDBP were present. So yes, if everything goes fine, so we expect how many records per subject? One record per subject per parameter. So we have 1001, one record for STSBP and one record for STDBP, and then same case for second subject as well. So we have the average value present here in the main column. So now this is nothing but our eval on the newly created average record. So we now need to do that processing, and then all these records are average of all post baseline values at subject and parameter level. So we will create those additional variables here. So we are creating a new dataset called AVG03 by using AVG02, and then we are rounding the average value to 2 decimals and then storing it in a variable called eval. And then for AVisitan, as for the specification, as these are the newly created records, so we were asked to set the value of 100. So we are doing that here. And for AVisit, so it was average of all post baseline values, so we are assigning that to AVisit variable. And then we are assigning average into the variable dtype. As we have applied the logic of averaging, so we are indicating that these records correspond to a logic of average. And then we just need to, let's take a look at AVG03. I think I have not kept AVG03 here, but AVG03 is appended to VS03. So, and after that we are sorting the records based on new subj ID, param and AVisitan and ADT. And then finally I am keeping only the required derived variables from my input dataset and then storing it as a dataset called output. So if let's take a look at the dataset called output. So here if we see, we have now the source records and the derived variables and the newly created record which is within the same parameter. This is STSBP, systolic blood pressure, but this is the average value of all post baseline values. So someone who is reviewing the dataset will clearly know by looking at the dtype variable So whenever it is not missing, it means that it is a derived record that is being added. So at the same time, we also need to note that this date variable will have null value, because this date will not have meaning, because we have averaged all the records which correspond to post baseline. So this is not directly coming from a single source record. It is the combination of one or more records in the source record. So we cannot populate ADT here. So let us quickly cross check one of the average values that is getting created. So I have filtered for subject ID 1001 and paramin is equal to 1, which is our systolic blood pressure. So here if we see, so there are two post-baseline record, week 2 and week 24, which were collected on 13th May 2003, which is after treatment start 29th April 2003. And then this is week 24 record, which is on 13th October, uh, which is 29 after 29th April. So these are the two post-baseline records. The other two records, this is on the day of treatment, so this is not considered as post-baseline. And this record is in April 15th, so which is prior to treatment start date. So these two record would have gone into our average record calculation. So what is this? How does average get calculated? So it has to be 142 plus 140 divided by 2, as two records were involved. So the average is supposed to be 141, so which is coming as expected here. So this is how you can create average records and visually verify if the logic is working fine or not. I think that completes the creation of new records as average of all post baseline values of a parameter. Thank you for watching and keep learning.